The North African Campaign was an important campaign to both the Axis powers and the Allies. It gave the Axis powers the opportunity to take away the Allies' access to Middle Eastern oil supplies. This would increase the availability of oil to the Axis and cut off Britain from material and human resources in Asia and Africa. This campaign was important to the Allies because it gave them the opportunity to open up a new front against the Axis. There were 3 phases to the North African Campaign. The first phase was the Western Desert Campaign. The fighting began on September 13, 1940, when Marshal Goronzai's Italian forces launched an attack from its bases in Libya on British forces in western Egypt. British forces responded December 9 with an attack led by General Sir Archibald Revel. On January 22, 1941, the British defeated the Italian in eastern Libya at Tobruk. Upon German General Erwin Rommel arrived in Libya. He quickly expanded the German units into what was called the German Afrika Corps. Rommel launched an offense on March 24th, reaching the Egyptian border on April 14th, where the British and German-Italian armies stayed stalemated until November 1941. The British Eighth Army, consisting of British, Australian, Indian, South African, New Zealand, and Free French soldiers, used the diversion of human and material resources from North Africa to the Eastern Front in Europe in the summer and autumn of 1941 to attack Rommel in which is known as the Operation Crusader. The British were able to drive the Axis army back into Libya, and on January 6, 1942, Rommel was forced to pull back to El Aguila. On January 21, 1942, Rommel launched the second offense, reaching Al-Gaza and Tobruk. May 26, the German and Italian troops launched another offense known as Operation Benzaya. On June 21, Tobruk fell, and Rommel's forces followed the retreating British into Egypt. During July 1942 at El Alamein, the British halted the Axis powers. Despite stopping the Axis, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill replaced his top military commanders in the Middle East. He appointed General Sir Harold Alexander as commander-in-chief of British forces in the Middle East and Lieutenant General Sir Bernard L. Montgomery as commander of the Eighth Army. August 30th, the Axis launched its final offense of the Western Desert Campaign. The British halted the Axis units on September 3rd at the Battle of Alam el-Halfa. After gathering troops and supplies, Montgomery attacked Rommel's forces at El Alamein on October 23, 1942. 10 days later, the Axis forces were forced to withdraw. They retreated quickly across Libya, leaving the Libyan capital on January 23, 1943. And a week later, they reached the Tunisian border. The second phase of the North African Campaign was Operation Torch. It began on November 8, 1942, lasting 3 days to November 11. Led by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, U.S. and British forces carried out this campaign. 3 task forces landed on beach near Casablanca on the Moroccan Atlantic coast, near Oran in western Algeria, and near Algiers, more than 250 miles to the east in Algeria. The Vichy French forces initially resisted the Germans, but with the persuasion of General Marc, Admiral Jean-François Darlan, Vichy High Commissioner for North Africa, and General Alphonse to order the French forces to cease armed resistance in Oran and Morocco on November 10th through 11th. In return, the Germans allowed Darlan to temporarily remain head of the French administration. When the Allies landed, it triggered the German occupation of the unoccupied zones of French to quickly dispatch of German troops to Tunisia. The Vichy French sunk their Mediterranean fleet on November 27, 1942, to avoid capture by the Germans. At the end of November, the Allies had crossed the Tunisian border in the northwest. The third phase of the North African campaign was the Tunisian campaign. On January 5th, the Tunisian campaign began when Allied forces landed near Sfax in eastern Tunisia. On February 4th, 1943, the British Eighth Army crossed the border from Libya into Tunisia on March 17th. They attacked Germans' position at Gafasa in west central Tunisia. German General Erwin Rommel was cut off from the supply bases and tried to use defense operations to stall the Allies. German and Italian troops managed to slow the Allies even though they were outnumbered and outgunned, but eventually the Allied forced the Axis to the north central Tunisian coast. May 7, 1943, the British 7th Army Division captured the Tunisian capital, and the U.S. Army Corps captured the last port remaining in Axis hands, Bizerta. 6 days later, after sustaining 40,000 casualties in Tunisia alone, the Axis forces finally surrendered, leaving 267 German and Italian soldiers prisoner of war. German and Italian casualties were 620,000. British casualties were 220 men. American casualties in Tunisia alone were more than 18,000. The Allied win in North America opened a second front against the Axis and allowed the invasion of Sicily and the Italian mainland in the summer of 1942. It also removed the Axis threat to the oil fields of the Middle East and to British supply lines in Asia and North Africa.